Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. So this week, I decided to give the 21 Hats podcast crew the week off. Between the Memorial Day holiday and our first 21 Hats in-person event the previous week in Chicago, which was attended by 5 of the podcast regulars, by the way, it seemed the right thing to do. It also seemed like a great opportunity to reprise one of our favorite all-time episodes. It's not a used episode, it's a certified pre-owned episode. Or better yet, a greatest hits episode. We first published it in December of 2021, and it features highlights taken from the podcasts we'd published up until that point that cover many of the risks and rewards of business ownership, including what it's like to sell your business, to fire an employee, to risk your own home in order to get financing, and even to deal with serious mental health issues. If you're new to the podcast, I think you'll find that these conversations bring real context to the journeys of the entrepreneurs you've been following here. But even if you've heard some of these discussions before, I think you'll find them a refreshing reminder that choosing to build a business can be a noble mission, but it generally doesn't come with an owner's manual. We're all figuring it out as we go. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations, brought to you by our principal sponsor, The Great Game of Business, will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which Inc. magazine named the best newsletter for business owners and which you can subscribe to for free at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. This certified pre-owned episode is titled Best of What It Takes to Build a Business. As you'll hear, I introduce each exchange in this episode with a few words to set the context. The first highlight, actually, comes from one of our closing episodes of 2020. In an exchange with Laura in episode 42, The Great COVID Churn, William predicts that 2021 will be a year of turnover. As we now know, he kinda nailed it.
I do think that this year and the pandemic in particular has accelerated a lot of things that might have taken a while to change. And it's also decelerated some things that were going to change and didn't. And a quick way of saying that is, I think you're going to see, in fact, I know, because I'm already seeing it, you're going to see 2021 as a year of, I'm calling it the great COVID churn. In other words, it's a year of turnover.
And what are you seeing that convinced you of that?
You ever remember in elementary school, there were the tests you take, and then there was the teacher's edition that already had the answers in it? We kind of get the teacher's edition on the job market because we're already seeing people tell us, I'm ready to make a move. And it's December. And who moves in December? You move in January, right? That's when everybody's going to lose 10 pounds and balance their checkbook. But we're already seeing, instead of January, okay, I'm ready to look around. We're seeing in December some pretty major moves. And it's made me stop and say, what's really going on here? And a couple things, I'll try not to ramble. But one, the pandemic put up a dam in the middle of what's a normal flow of turnover. Like turnover just happens in the job market. I mean, there's healthy turnover, there's unhealthy, but there's always turnover, except when there's a pandemic. Obviously some companies had to lay people off because of the pandemic. So there was some churn there, but a lot of good people that would have made a natural move because of career stage or a geographic need or a promotion or try a new thing. A lot of the people that would have made those moves voluntarily hunkered down during the pandemic, and what should be a natural flowing river of healthy transition, it actually got dammed up by the pandemic. So that's one thing. And now that vaccine's been approved in the UK and should be here in the US pretty soon, and maybe it'll take till end of Q2 for everybody that wants a vaccine to receive one. By the end of Q2, I think the fear of moving will have gone away. And that's just to say, we've lived with a really uncertain year. And a lot of people that would have made a move have said, I don't need any more extra uncertainty in my life right now. So I'm going to wait and make a move once this clears.
Can I jump in? So where we live, in Reno, it's a lot of, I don't know what the statistic is, but there's not a huge population of people that were actually born in Reno and are from Reno. It's a lot of people from the East Coast and all around, and people are moving home. They've just decided, they're like, this is it. I'm done.
Laura, I totally agree with you. I would say there are a myriad of reasons why this is going to be the year of turnover. One of them is people who were waiting to start their own company, people who were waiting to take a job at a competitor, people they're like, no, I'm not doing that right now. No more uncertainty. Now, right after that, there's a whole lot of other reasons, like we're doing several searches right now for repeat clients where we placed an individual and it's only been 3, 4, 5 years and the individual has moved and the client has rehired us to refill the spot, which you would think, why would you rehire us if the guy only lasted that long? And they say, well, no. They did a wonderful job, but the pandemic has made them realize they want to live near their family of origin. They want to go back home. That's only going to accelerate. And then you add in, I've got some dear friends in Park City, which has been a quiet little mountain town forever. And now it is one of these bedroom communities outside of a major city, and Salt Lake's growing like crazy. Well, Park City's growing quicker because, as Lauren can relate, Princeton and the Stamford, Connecticut, all the places Don and Betty Draper would have lived that everybody said was a dead real estate market. Well, it's hopping. Everybody wants out of the city. So people are moving geographically, and that's going to increase in 21. People are moving for family reasons. That's going to increase in 21. People are moving because they would have moved in 20 and they put it off, and that's going to increase in 21. The other thing that's happened is everyone's job has completely changed, and a whole lot. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people who are like, this isn't what I signed up for anymore.
In episode 44, How Do I Manage My Managers?, the following exchange between Jay and Laura came in response to a question from a listener, Hap Cameron, who owns Happy Cones, a New Zealand-style ice cream company in Denver. Hap was looking for suggestions on how to manage his managers more effectively. And by the way, if you ever have questions for the podcast panel, you can send them to me simply by replying to your morning report.
Number one, and most people don't talk about this, the most important part of management is in management. It's hiring the right person in the first place. So first, I'd put a lot more energy or good energy into figuring out what kind of person is going to do the best job doing this, put a great ad together, interview thoroughly, check references, and most entrepreneurs are not real good at it, including me. Why? Because we like people, because we like to talk about our companies, and we're in a hurry. That's not a good thing in hiring. Slow down the hiring process and do your best to find someone that has had experience doing something with customers. Ask good questions during the interview, like, tell me about a customer experience you've had.
Jay, is that realistic advice for an ice cream shop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why? Why not? Maybe they didn't work in an ice cream shop. No question. But did they have a job before? They've never had a job? Okay. Maybe they're right up. Maybe they just graduated high school, whatever. They've never had a job. Okay. But most people have had a job before. So I would ask them, tell me about dealing with customers. Because at the end of the day, people are not going to be pissed at you because your chocolate ice cream wasn't quite as good as the chocolate. No, they're going to be pissed because your person wasn't nice. Go to Yelp. That's all you have to do. Just look at Yelp and see the reviews. Usually it's about, they've got an attitude in there, or they weren't nice to me, or I hate that. It's usually not about the product. It's usually about the people. So you want to hire a nice person who's going to give a wonderful feeling to your ice cream shop. So you've got to figure out what kind of questions do you ask to tease that out. And the one I would ask is, tell me about a difficult customer situation you've had and how did you handle it? And you can tell by just their body language. Do they sigh? Do they say, oh, wow, I had one, boy, 6 months. And then you find out what they learned from it. And you find out whether they've got an attitude about it. Like, well, people are jerks sometimes versus, listen, I understand my number one job is to make sure people are happy. Even if they're not nice to me, I suck it up. It's not a problem. I don't take it personally. I want to see how they handle that, how they process that. Hiring, number one. Okay. Number two, set standards. In an ice cream shop, I'll give you my top 4. Make sure this door opens on time. How many retail stores do you go to that they're not open when they're supposed to be open and you stand out in front waiting? I have a simple solution to that. My employees know our standards are we open 5 minutes early and we don't lock the door till 5 minutes after closing. So there's none of that screaming through the door, pointing at your wristwatch. We're closed. Like, if we close at 6, no one locked the door till 6:05. Easy versus, getting into the fight with the customer. So setting standards like that, cleanliness, got to be critical. Like, you shouldn't walk into your ice cream shop and find dirty napkins laying on the floor. Customer service, if someone's not happy, how do you handle it? Oh, no problem. Let me get you something else. You need to train people on that stuff, because some people think they're doing the company a favor if they fight with customers. They think that's their job.
Is it fair to ask this manager to write up those standards?
No, not at all. Well, you could ask on the interview to see if they can do it. That certainly would be.
But could you make that part of their job? Could you say, look, part of the reason I'm hiring you is because I want you to create these standards. I want us to agree on them.
No,
I don't
absolutely
have time.
not. You've just given away. You're no longer the owner. Now it's like your employee is deciding who your store is. No, I don't mind asking them, what do you think? If I had to, Mary, what do you think the 4 most important things to being a manager in the store? And see if she can come up with it. This ain't brain surgery. They should come up with customer service, cleanliness, making sure that, we got the place staffed properly for the right time. They should be able to come up with this if you wanted to be a manager.
In episode 46, a fabulous conversation about marketing, we welcomed Stephanie Stuckey to the podcast. Later in the year, Diana Lee, who co-founded Constellation Agency, a digital marketing business, would join as well. And by the way, in January, we will be adding 2 new members to the 21 Hats podcast team. Stephanie explained how she had bought back Stuckey's, the family roadside stop business, which had once been everywhere but had fallen into serious decline. Her plans to reinvigorate the business, she told Dana and Laura, included aggressive use of social media, including LinkedIn.
LinkedIn was the biggest surprise. I get so much engagement on LinkedIn. It's the comments. And it's not just well done or kudos. I like that. I really like this because, like today, for example, I can't afford marketing research. So I'm deciding between 2 billboard designs. And I was really head set on one billboard design. And the owner of the store wants another billboard design. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to put this up on LinkedIn. I'm going to ask people for their feedback and everyone's going to agree with me. And then I'm going to go show this to the store owner and say, all right, see, I'm right. Well, I posted it. I said, I want your feedback. I've already gotten a lot of feedback and it's been mixed. A lot of people like the way he likes the billboard. So that's just one example, but the feedback I'm getting is not just I like the top one. It's I like the top one because the logo stands out more.
God, what a great way to grow this brand by having your community involved in all of these decision makings.
And I'm getting free consulting. I put up display concepts. Oh, this was my favorite. I put up display concepts and I've been working on this display because we're so small and we have limited budget. And we don't own our own stores. Part of my growth strategy is we get retail partners and that sell our product, but they don't pay us a franchise like an Ace Hardware. So I'm working on these displays that look like a mini Stuckey store with a roof, a blue roof, and a little Stuckey's sign. And so you get the experience of a road trip from the display, even though you may be at your local Ace Hardware store. So I got the inspiration for this display shamelessly from a Krispy Kreme display that I'd taken a photo of, and I showed it to this guy who makes displays. And I was like, this is my inspiration. Can you mock up something? And so I had a prototype and I put the prototype on LinkedIn. I said, can you all give me feedback? What do you think of this? Got tons of great comments. And this one guy messaged me and said, I really like this. I have some valuable feedback. I'd love to have a phone call with you. It looks a lot like the display that I created for Krispy Kreme when I was their marketing director. And he showed me a photo and I was like, busted. He's now helping me, by the way.
That's great.
Yeah. At a very reasonable rate because he said, I love your brand. He's no longer working for Krispy Kreme. He just took time off for family reasons. And he's like, this is a fun project. I'm interested in helping you. And he's amazing. And I found that through LinkedIn, through a LinkedIn comment. I didn't even say I was hiring.
In episode 48, I Want to Have Clean Hands, Paul, Jay, and Dana talk about the mechanics of firing an employee and how to make the best of a bad situation.
I had an employee that I fired because he wasn't showing up for work. And I did all the stuff, documenting it, writing it down. And we had the final meeting where his transgressions were to be reviewed, and I filmed it. And what happened was I sat down, handed him a document. Here's your problem. Here's the policy violation. Started reading it to him. He threw it in my face and jumped up, basically, screw you, I'm out of here. But he was smart. He said, you can fire me if you want, but I'm not listening to this garbage. And then he just left. And so then I did go and fire him. And then, of course, he claimed unemployment. And I sent this movie into the adjudicator and I said, check this out. How in the world is this not a quit? And he said, well, it's not a quit. He asked you, he didn't say he was quitting. He said, fire me. And you did. So it's a fire. And the guy took pity on me. He told me exactly how to play it so that the claim would be denied. And it was. And it basically was the guy had demonstrated that he couldn't be managed. And that instead of me saying that he had quit, I should just say he couldn't be managed,
That is a critical piece of this.
It wasn't a question of competence or whether he could do his job or not. And it wasn't a question of who quit or who got fired. It was he had demonstrated very clearly that he could not be managed, and that was a legitimate reason for me to get rid of him.
You hit on the key piece, which is there's maybe half a dozen reasons why someone's not eligible for unemployment. One of them is they didn't follow agreed upon rules. One is attendance. There's reasons. So you have to pick the reason. I think that,
Jay, before you say that in a blanket way, we should emphasize that these rules differ from state to state.
Yes. My point is,
what you say about Illinois and what I say about Pennsylvania may be real different in Alabama. Or New York, for that matter.
I'm 100% with you on this. You need to know the rules, and if you follow the rules, and you have to fire someone for those rules, you will win unemployment. But at least in Illinois, if someone, you can't say, oh, they weren't doing a good job. That's not a reason they don't get unemployment.
I want to follow up on one aspect of what Paul just said. Do we all think it's a good idea to videotape a session where you are letting an employee go?
I think it's a bad idea because there shouldn't be enough discourse to videotape. Termination should be quick, and you should always have somebody there with you. And some of the times we've even had a quick sign off, a quick 2 or 3 sentence paragraph saying, yes, I'm being terminated on this day and done, but videotaping it.
I haven't found it necessary, and B, I find it to be just too adversarial. Personally, this is just my own personal thing. I don't like the idea of returning this into a court case right off. Here, we're going to videotape. I'm not comfortable with it. And I have found that by documenting it, it's worked fine.
Paul, what do you think? Have you continued to do that?
I haven't, but I find the threat of it to be extremely useful. So I did that one, and it actually was really helpful to me in the situation where I was trying to get the adjudicator to see what happened. I mean, the one thing about video is there's no argument about what happened. But since then, what I've done is prepare documentation and have a witness. And what I tell the person I'm about to fire or discipline when they come in is, hey, I'm going to do you a favor. I'm not going to turn on a camera here. And what it does is it lets them know it could be even worse. They're about to have probably the worst moment or one of the worst moments of their adult lives. And I'm going to tell them that there is a further level of humiliation that I could subject them to, and I'm not going to do it. And that has worked out well for me since then, in that I've discharged 6 or 8 people for cause, and I haven't had any unemployment claims from that. Because I try to always leave them with a sense that it's not working out, but I don't bear you any ill will.
So by telling them, hey, I'm going to do you a favor by not recording you right now, I see the bully, and I see the bully and the buddy, right? Like, let me help you help yourself.
I mean, there's no way around it. You got to be hard at some moments as a boss. You just have to be. and you have to do hard things, and they are humiliating and they are dreadful for the person you're doing them to. And that's just part of the job. But there's ways to do it that make it worse or ways to do it that make it better. And I'm not a hard person, but I will do a hard thing if I feel like that employees' continued employment is threatening the health of the rest of the team. That's what makes me act. And but I try to always pull back a little bit as the punch lands and try to make it as good as it could be.
Well, let me give you my version of that. Clearly, you have to fire some people, and clearly they're usually not going to be happy about it. And my approach has been, I want to have clean hands, which means they've been talked to about it before. They were given an opportunity to fix whatever the problem was. They've given an opportunity to go look for another job because you said, listen, I'm starting to get concerned. You're the wrong person for this job. They've had all that opportunity. When it comes to time that they have to get fired, I want clean hands. And if they go, which just happened, I can't believe you're doing this, and say, I can't believe you're surprised. We just had a conversation 2 weeks ago, and I told you exactly where we're at. And listen, Bob, if their name's Bob, you don't have to agree with me. Maybe you're right. All I know is this isn't working out for us here. Today's your last day. I wish you well.
I think that one of the critical things is not the meeting that involves the firing, but the one before that. And
probably.
I bring out the full documentation and the full, it's all the same things you would do to fire someone with an escape valve at the end. So there is the written part, there is the witness, there is the policy violation, there's the person has to sign an agreement that they've been in the meeting, they understood what happened. But I always say, I've laid out what I want to change in this document we're both reviewing. I want you to stop doing X and I want you to start doing Y. And if you do that, we'll forget about this. It'll be in your record, but I'm not going to hold it against you. It's like a real warning.
You have just described having clean hands. No, you just described exactly what I'm talking about.
Change direction, and bad ones continue down the road, and then you fire them, but they're not surprised.
In episode 49, How Do We Get Out of This Cage?, Laura takes us back to the founding of Jimmy Bean's Wool. Before they started the business, Laura and her husband Doug were coders in San Francisco who did very well before the internet bubble burst. After the bubble, they moved to Reno where they opened a neighborhood yarn store. But then, being coders, they turned it into the internet's neighborhood yarn store, with Doug engineering their platform himself. In many ways, they were far ahead of their time. But almost 20 years later, Laura tells Karen and William they find themselves in a predicament. Laura, I'd like to start with you. I understand you have an important job opening. If I'm not mistaken, you're looking to replace your husband.
Yeah, I am. God, if there's a rich single man out there that would like an 11-year-old kid.
William, in your experience, how long does a husband search usually take?
Well, if you're willing to go the mail order route, we can get done pretty quick.
Perfect.
In all seriousness, your husband is your co-founder and I guess kind of the chief technology officer at Jimmy Bean's Wool. Is that right?
Yeah, he's the everything technology officer. But yes. So he has built, we've been in business 19 years. He started full-time 17 years ago, and he has built pretty much every piece of software that we use. So
from scratch, Laura?
From scratch.
Okay. Huh?
Yeah. So it's all zeros and ones. It's all like ASP.NET, JavaScript, VB. So, we have.
I just have to ask: are there no systems out there you could have used? So you had to make them from
not
scratch?
19 years ago. No.
Oh wow.
No, and that was actually our big, huge competitive advantage is that nobody had. I mean, we probably could have spent $200,000 at the time. I mean, there was no Shopify. I mean, this was, we started years before Facebook started.
And also, you guys were both coders who made your living doing this.
Yes. Yeah. So we started it with, an inventory management system that linked to a website, which was the e-commerce. Plus we had a point of sale system because we had a retail store. So we had this platform that Doug built and then just expanded it and expanded it. And you couldn't buy, we're in the yarn industry. And so we have all these interesting little things. It's not apparel where you sell one t-shirt in one size. You sell 2 hanks of yarn if somebody's going to make a scarf. You sell 3 hanks of the same color if somebody's going to make this. You sell blah, blah, blah. And then there are dye lots. So there are some complexities inherent to the industry that we're in that make it so that you can't just buy off-the-shelf software. Or you could, and then you could customize it, and that's something that we need to think about. But so now we have this, 19-year-old legacy system that Doug has built, added on to. He's invented some things, if you will, before things were available or readily available, like subscriptions. Before, I don't know what that subscription platform is, but he built a subscription platform for us before you could go buy one somewhere so that we could run subscriptions. So all of that said, he has built it. He maintains it. He maintains AWS for us. He maintains our phone system. He has 2 college-aged women that help him, and that he is training and teaching. We've run through over the last 10 years, I guess, maybe 12 years. We've tried hiring college students. We've tried hiring $150,000 a year people from Stanford. We've tried everything in between. We've probably hired 15 people over the last 10 years.
Wow.
Yes. So,
all to try to replace Doug or to do different things?
Well, we would, in an ideal world, he's a bright guy, and he's a creative, like he designs our house. He's an architect. He was a technical architect in the Bay Area before we started this. So in an ideal world, he would have a team underneath him with somebody that managed the team, and he could do the new creations, and he could create new technologies. That's what he's, uniquely talented at. But, or he could just walk away. I mean, if we found somebody to replace him today, he would walk away. He'd get on his mountain bike and ride into the sunset, very happily.
I think you told us previously that his dream is to be a house husband.
He wanted to be, his dream his whole life was to be a stay-at-home dad with no kids. And then I got pregnant, so we had the kid. But so one of our employees at one point put it described it very well, and that Doug has built a cage around himself, and we need to figure out how to get him out of that cage because the system can't survive without him.
In episode 50, So You Bet the House, Stephanie tells Jay about her decision to double down on her investment in Stuckey's by buying a manufacturing facility that will allow her to shell her own pecans and stop outsourcing the making of pecan log rolls and other candies. Stephanie's hope is that this will allow her to control costs and quality more effectively. But even with a 50-50 partner, buying the plant was a significant investment, and arranging the financing was a torturous process that culminated in her taking a risk that many non-entrepreneurs would find inconceivable. Stephanie, I want to take a step back and take the larger view of this for a second. You took a big leap when you bought the company in 2019. This seems like an even bigger leap. You're even further invested, taking bigger risk.
Absolutely.
What are you most worried about? What concerns you the most?
There's one thing I meant to mention earlier when you were talking about the risk from the initial purchase of Stuckey's. This is a multiple of that amount of money to purchase this manufacturing facility. And I did mean to bring up how we financed it, and it was through a SBA loan. And we did a 7A loan. And I think it is important. So many people with the CARES Act talk about the PPP, which of course is a benefit that has been a huge boost to businesses. But these loans for acquisition of facilities are also benefiting from the CARES Act 2, round 2. And the first 6 months of our payments, the SBA is going to pay up to $9,000 of our mortgage payments. So that's a boost that's not always mentioned in the news.
Nice.
what keeps me up or what worries me about this, I guess obviously it's a financial investment, and the SBA loan, and it's a great thing if you can get it. That's a whole other episode, trying to get financing on a big acquisition for a small business, because it typically requires you having good credit, which my business partner and I are fortunate to have, but you also have to have collateral, and the SBA loans do require you to put up personal collateral. So
you bet the house?
My house is collateral now. Yep.
Welcome to entrepreneurship. I'm glad there's some honesty out there, because that's the way it works. Because I got to tell you, especially now with the banks, it's about collateral, and collateral.
It's incredible. Not only did I have to put my house up as collateral, but then I had to make sure that the home insurance policy listed the bank. I had to take out an additional life insurance policy and list the bank. I was just waiting for them to call me and tell them my firstborn son has to be collateral as well.
In episode 57, Dana White decides to franchise Paralee Boyd. Dana tells Jay and Stephanie what she's decided to do with the $200,000 she won at an entrepreneurship competition in 2020. Dana's decision will loom larger as 2021 goes on and she lands another big opportunity. This one to open company-owned salons on American military bases around the country and even the world.
So I've made the final decision as to what to do with my winnings from Detroit Demo Day.
Interesting.
And it's been a long back and forth journey, and I have decided to franchise.
Wow.
That's so funny. I'm actually trying to get out of franchising. I'm the opposite direction.
That's why I wanted you here today, Stephanie.
Franchising gone wrong.
We're going to talk about that. But first, tell us, Dana, why? What brought you to this decision?
So I had decided that it was time to expand. And so I had looked at going to Chicago.
We talked about that. We had an episode.
Absolutely. I was going to Chicago and had a conversation with my operations manager. And she said, I think Chicago would be an amazing move. But I hope you don't mind me saying, I'd like to talk to you. And I said, sure, what's going on? And she said, you know my background. I've worked with the Sports Clips franchise, Great Clips franchise, and Lady Jane's operations. And I said, yep, those are all hair salons. And she said, after having worked here for the time that I have, I've never seen anything like your business. And if you don't mind me saying, I think you are perfect for a franchise model. And we really went in depth and had a conversation that inspired me to call up the franchise consultant and just have a basic conversation. What is the state of franchising after COVID, during COVID? What's going on? And we had a very frank conversation, and we talked, and he pointed me in the right direction to get the information that I needed. And then after that, I, talked to people, read the reports, and called him back and said, this is what I'm thinking, and this is what I can do. He was like, okay, I think it'd be a great idea, but you have to think it's a great idea. So let's get you comfortable with it. My network has stepped up. Ernst & Young has stepped up. Goldman Sachs has stepped up to give me as much information and support that I need to execute this perfectly. iFranchise Group, I started my process. I'm about 2 weeks in a 5-month process. And at the end of this process, I will be the first African-American woman beauty franchisor. And we're already starting to talk about subsidiaries in other countries, 5 other countries. This is the same group of same franchise team that franchised Dry Bar. And so they've been able to impart their wisdom on what went right with that process, what could have been improved in that process, and what makes Paralee Boyd different. But I am extremely confident using my resources, the people that I've talked to away from my iFranchise Group family, as I'd like to call them. I told them, of course you're going to give me great references. I want to talk to the people who have nothing to do with you that are franchises. And they said, understood. And that's where I leaned on Goldman Sachs and Ernst & Young to put me in touch with their clients who either started franchises or have been in franchising for years. And that was it. We're off and running to the races. It's been a great process so far.
Wow. Jay, any questions for Dana?
Wow. A lot to take in. The franchise consultant, I mean, I've looked into this a little bit. There's, 20 of them. This one, okay, so this one did Dry Bar. Okay, that's good. Are you privy to what the numbers are from that whole thing?
What do you mean the numbers?
Are they making money? How many lawsuits are coming from the people that bought the franchises? Are they? First question I asked was about the lawsuit. I've asked not only my franchise group what is the number of their lawsuits, but other franchisors, and the numbers are low. And I said, okay, but why do you have numbers at all? And they told me why they have numbers at all. And so, are there some lawsuits? Yes, but a lot of it has to do with the franchise consulting firm that you start with. No question. There's absolutely no question. And it comes down to being careful who you sell the franchise to. So there is no question that franchising is one of the greatest inventions of the 20th century. But with that being said, there's been lots of failures over the years. And I'm glad that it sounds like you did your homework on it. So, okay. Wow.
Stephanie, how about you? Any questions for Dana?
I'm not so sure if it's questions as much as some cautionary tales, although this all sounds great. So I in no way want to dampen this enthusiasm. And I love that you would be or will be the first female African-American franchisor of a beauty salon chain. So I'm all for it. I just have a very different experience. And part of it is that I purchased Stuckey's, and we had a franchise system that had really gone awry after years of neglect. So the challenge you have, and you know this, is ensuring consistency and quality and really capturing what's unique and making sure your franchisees get that. And in order to have that, you have to have a strong operations program and systems in place. And we lacked that at Stuckey's, so we don't have consistency. So I'm trying to do a lot of cleanup.
In episode 65, this is where we get into therapy. Paul, Jay, and Laura, well, they get into therapy. Laura acknowledges her discomfort with some aspects of being an owner. Does she work hard enough? Does she pay herself too much? Does she deserve her success? Laura, I'm curious with you, given your feelings of guilt, are you uncomfortable with the idea that there are certain people at your company that know how much money you're taking?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my salary is low. You know, my payroll salary is low. And I mean, not low, but I'm not the highest paid person at the business. And neither is Doug. So that doesn't bother me.
Wait. What?
I know.
You have employees making more money than you're making?
From a salary standpoint, yes.
Okay.
But then we take distributions.
Right.
Right now, we're just paying back, the loan that we made to ourselves. Certainly, there are things that I get uncomfortable with. Like, one of our office manager, our accountant sent our taxes to her the other day. And I'm like, no, I don't want her to see all of it.
Plus your social security number. No.
Oh, I don't care.
You say that.
Please.
You say that until it happens, then you're going to find out.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure. So yes, it does me. I mean, because I feel guilt but I'm learning a lot just from listening to you guys.
I'm surprised after all of the difficult times you've had, because I certainly used to feel like you did. I'm surprised that after all of the difficult, stressful times you've had, you haven't finally figured out this is why I make money, because I did. And maybe just because I'm older than you, at finally some point I realized this is why I deserve versus guilt, replacing guilt with deserve. This is why if I happen to do well because of what I did and the business is really profitable, I no longer have any guilt. I certainly used to.
It's the deserve thing. Even taking this last week off, I feel so much guilt.
Wow.
Because everybody else is working and I'm not.
Don't they get vacations, your employees?
They do.
Okay,
yeah,
so
they do.
What's the problem with that?
We're going to get into therapy.
I think we're already in it, so just finish it out.
It boils down to the deserve thing.
Yeah,
I don't deserve it.
Right.
Because I haven't worked hard enough. I've made too many mistakes.
You haven't worked hard enough.
I could have worked harder.
Oh man, you should go read that book. What is it? The Jungle.
Okay.
Where the guy's like in the meatpacking industry, and every time he gets utterly screwed by everybody in sight, and then his reaction is, "Oh, I should work harder." It's like, no, you're getting reamed by the politics, the business, the government. Like everybody's on him, and you're just seeing it. I don't know who taught you to do that. You should go slap him because. I'm done.
Laura, is this a surprise to you? Because it was a surprise to me when someone pointed it out to me 20 years ago. Would it be a surprise to you if I said that you're obsessive? Do you know that about yourself?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, well, this is part of being obsessive. You don't think you're working hard enough. It's all part of being obsessive. And I was talking to my friend one day, and I said, boy, the guy in the article, I think it was Bo Burlingham, actually. He said, he called me obsessive. And I was telling my friend this, who's known me since I was 10 years old. And he goes, Jay, you are obsessive. You didn't know that? You used to time yourself when you cut the lawn at home. And I go, what do you mean I used to time myself? But I got to tell you, I'm obsessive, and now I recognize it, and I've made some adjustments.
Yeah.
I think.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, of course. You mean you don't time yourself to see how fast you can get the mail and see if you can get a PR? Doesn't everybody do that? Oh, God. Yeah, it's crazy.
With herself, which is a problem.
With myself. Yes, it's with myself. And I think there's probably some, maybe it's not narcissism, but it's that I, feel like I'm the center of the world. And so, everybody's sitting there watching what I'm doing and paying attention to whether or not I'm working. And I realize that that's not rational and not accurate. But anyway, so yeah, fighting it.
In episode 72, It's a Pile of Money, Jay talks about how commonplace it's become for job candidates to schedule an interview and then just not show up. Paul suggests this may be because some of those candidates are getting snapped up by other employers. He then explains how much his own hiring process has changed because of the labor shortage. At least for now, Paul says, the days of hire slow are very much over.
I've noticed that when we interview people now, we really need to be ready to lock them down right that second, make a decision, take them out of the job search, or they're gone. Like the idea that we could spend time thinking about it and, dragging our feet.
You know what? I'm sure you're absolutely right that that's part of it, for sure.
So someone else will hire them. I mean, it's just a different market now. We're not in 2009 anymore, and employers are going to have to make adjustments, and that's one of them. You see someone you want, like what I do is I hire them and try to get them in here, and then we'll take our time to make a decision about it. And but then we've removed them from the job market, and we have the chance to make the decision as opposed to them making the decision. And that costs money. Basically, the way you do that is by, if they're asking for 17, say, tell you what, I want to hire you right now, and I'll give you 18. And you can start, whenever you can. And then if it works out, it'll be great. And if not, I'll fire you. But they respect the honesty and they understand what's going on. And they got to make a decision. If they've been identified as someone who's worth more than they think they are, and then I got a chance to do whatever I want with them. And I have had people who we let go fairly quickly after hiring them because they didn't turn out to be a good fit. But then there's others that were even better. And I was glad that I didn't let them walk out the door at that interview and go get hired somewhere else, because someone else would hire them.
But do you actually say to them, if it doesn't work out, I'll fire you?
Yeah. A lot of people actually appreciate a company which is clear about its standards. Now, I have a whole list of what we call the new employee guidelines that say, okay, here's what you're expected to achieve. Do you show up on time? Here's a whole bunch of things. If you can answer yes to all these questions after 3 weeks, great. And if you can't, then don't take this job, because these are the rules of the game you're playing. It's not that hard to succeed. Do a good job and show up and be a good teammate, and you're in.
In episode 73, Get Rid of the Arsonists, we tried something different. Mostly because no one else was available, I talked to Jay one-on-one. Having had these weekly conversations for 2 years, I wasn't entirely sure what we'd talk about. But given Jay's wealth of experience, we managed to pass the time. In fact, based on listener feedback, Jay's detailed explanation of how he learned to delegate was easily one of our most memorable segments of the year. Have you always known how to delegate?
No, clueless. Never had a job. Started by myself. I had to figure it out. So I'll just give you this example. So I don't know, I was probably in business 5-6 years. I had 20, 30 employees, and I kept reading books about delegation, or maybe I scanned the book, or maybe I just saw the front cover of the book, but I knew delegation. So I figured, you know what, Jay, you got to start delegating more. So it happened to be the end of the year, and in Chicago, you have to put a vehicle sticker on the windshield every December 31st. You have to change the sticker out. So I said to myself, all right, this is a good thing to delegate because somebody else can do this. It'll save me time. So I get one of my guys, and I had a company van at the time, and I said, here, will you put the vehicle sticker on? Sure, no problem. So he puts it on, and feeling good about myself. Look at that. I delegated. I saved myself 20 minutes or whatever. And I go out to the van that night, and the sticker's like halfway up the window. Like, it's supposed to be in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm thinking, oh, for God's sakes, doesn't he know that? So
halfway up the windshield, right?
Up the windshield, yeah. So for a year, like a dunce cap, I got to look at this stupid sticker because once it's on, you can't get it off. So for a year, I had to look at this thing and remind myself I'm not good at this. So a year goes by, and then I realized, no, I didn't understand delegation. You got to give instructions. So the second year, at this point, didn't just have a company van. I was driving a car now. So I had both a company van and a car, and I gave them the 2 stickers, and I gave them instructions, put the sticker on 2 inches on the bottom, 2 inches on the side. Here's a paper towel, put it on the dashboard. Here's a rate, laid it all out because I'm becoming a manager. I got this whole delegation thing. So he comes back 20, 30 minutes later. You get the stickers on. He goes, yeah. I go, sounds a little tentative. What do you mean, yeah? Well, I lost the razor blade. Whoa, what do you mean you lost the razor blade? Yeah, I don't know where the razor blade went. And so I had to worry for the next year that I had 2 little kids at the time, that maybe my kid was going to sit on a razor blade or I was going to find it somewhere. So for the next year, I had to worry about a razor blade. Okay, that was the second year. Third year. All right, now I got it. I've got the whole Murphy's Law thing. I know whatever can go wrong can go wrong. So now I'm a professional manager. I figured it out. I'm going to give them 1 sticker at a time. So I get another guy. And this year, it was particularly cold out. It was like 0 degrees out, and it was the perfect time to be delegating something like this. The guy had a nice coat, but, so I figured, okay, here's sticker 1. Put it on the van. Told him the same instructions. And when you're done, come back to me, and then I'll give you the second sticker, because I knew that they'd probably mix up the 2 stickers. So I've got it all figured out now because I become a manager. Okay. Comes back after 15 minutes and the sticker in 1 piece. He's, okay, I'm ready for, I said, oh my God, I've never gotten a sticker off in 1 piece. I'm some kind of delegation genius. I got the right guy on the right job. I train him. Look at this. So I happily give him the second sticker, and he goes off to put it on my car. So 20 minutes go by. 30 minutes go by. I don't see him. So I go to find him, and I see him coming out of the bathroom, and he's white as a ghost, like sick. I said, did you get the sticker on? He goes, no. Why not? The windshield exploded. He used the blowtorch to get the vehicle sticker off. That's how it came off in 1 piece. And my right-hand guy was standing there, and he goes, I saw him going through the showroom with the blowtorch. I wonder where he was going with that. So he just blew up the windshield of the boss's new Lincoln Continental.
What did you do?
I got a new windshield. I didn't go yelling at him. I mean, what are you going to do at that point? I mean, I can literally remember when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, and my mother told me, don't take a cold plate and put it in the oven. And like, obviously his mother didn't tell him that. So people could go, oh my God, how stupid. Well, if someone didn't tell you that, how would you know that? So I put a new windshield in, and the lesson from that year was, when you delegate, some things get messed up sometimes. So the next 35 years till today, I now have 10 vehicles between the cars and the trucks, and I put the vehicle stickers on myself. So if you ask me, what do? That's one of the few things I don't delegate, and I feel good about it, and I like doing it.
What is the lesson to be taken from this?
the lesson from this is I've delegated pretty much everything else in this company except putting vehicle stickers on, and I don't mind doing it. And the city changed their date now. You don't have to do it December 31st. The dates float, and I got the city, all of the stickers all go on in September, so the weather's nice. So that's my sideline, and I haven't blown up any windshields or anything, so I do a really good job on that. So do what you're good at.
In episode 74, Every Day I Have to Force Myself to Get Out of Bed, we ventured even deeper into therapy, as Laura talked about her lifelong struggle with depression. She spoke with Jay and Dana about the impact it's had on her business and how she copes with it. After the episode aired, we received several very moving notes from listeners who had had similar experiences and who appreciated Laura's willingness to talk publicly about depression.
I think what hit me, and you may want to cut this out, but, I realize one of the reasons that I share my lows more than I share my highs is, you guys know, I'm depressed, and I've always been depressed. It is hard for me to get out of bed every day. Every day, I have to force myself to get out of bed and to not just crawl under the sheets. And it's been that way my whole life.
That is a legitimate explanation.
Yep.
I might even feel bad now, but I don't feel bad because it's still good advice. But you're right. I fully respect and appreciate that. So like I said, I'm not beating up on you. I'm not criticizing you. I'm just telling you.
It's good. And you're totally right. And I work so hard. And maybe I don't get the same results as somebody else who works just as hard, right? But I work so hard on stoicism and trying to let things go and trying to be productive and not going down this hole. But, the last few years have been hard. And we've had lots of ups. I can tell you all kinds of great stuff that's happened over the last couple weeks. It looks like we're going to get the bank loan. It looks like this building's going to go through. We're going to get it at a great rate. Our staff is really stoked on it.
We talked about this the last time you were on. You're buying a new building for your
Buying a new building. I've got a new brand that I'm going to be the big thinker on and launch. But I feel like, and maybe this is the wrong thing to do, but I've always felt like nobody talks about the dark parts. And that's not true. A lot of people do talk about the dark parts. They mention it. But they mention it. And so I'm very open with, I thought about killing myself last week, I was that low. And that's that's because everybody in my family has killed themselves. So that's just training.
Right,
That's the first place that you go.
There. I doubt that everyone in your family has killed themselves.
They haven't.
Okay.
No, good point. But multiple people, my mom, her mom, my uncle, blah, blah, blah. So, there's some programming there that I recognize intellectually that this is programming. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it. Doesn't mean I'm seriously thinking about it. But, I know that I'm going to a dark spot, which is an emotional spot. It just is. And all I can do is go for a run or sometimes just wait it out.
Does your team, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Laura, but does your person that's next to you in this company, do they know that?
Oh, totally. I'm super open about it.
And so here's the thing. Ashley, my operations manager, does a very good job of managing how involved I get.
Yes.
And what she brings to me because she knows how low I can go.
Yes.
Not low as like a man, but how much it'll weigh on me. And she's like, I need you to focus on this so this company can grow. Don't worry about what she said when we fired her. She's gone.
I'll say 97% of the time, that is the case here as well.
Okay, great.
We have just been pushing my number two, both of my number twos, so my number four, have been pushing so freaking hard for the last 6 months. And I'm so grateful for that. I couldn't ask for them to work harder, and they're working on the right things. But as a result, they haven't had the energy, or perhaps they've slipped a little bit and they've let things come to me that have affected me emotionally. And I have made the mistake of jumping in to try to help them, because we're still building our teams. Like Jay said, we're still trying to figure out if this production manager is going to work. He may not, we're on our third one. We're not, we lost 5 people 2 weeks ago. So we had 5 people leave, all at once. So we're hiring and blah, 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 blah. It's all good stuff. It's all fine. It's all gonna work out. But, you take the COVID, the smoke, the overwhelmed, you take a couple of emotional people, you take me being emotional and blah, 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 and it just hits you sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, just for clarity, had you said, I really did not you said, well, you all know this, I really didn't know that it was that bad. And if anything gets cut from this, it shouldn't be this part. It should be me going off on you because I didn't realize that. So you have every excuse to, I get it. Good for you. And good for you for being honest, because you're certainly not the only person that's dealing with that.
Yeah, I wanted to say that too. Thank you for saying this, Laura.
Yeah, that's huge.
No, and I think I'm very grateful that at almost 47 years old, 99.8% of the time, I know it just is what it is. I mean, my freaking chemistry is off. I create, different levels of dopamine and serotonin and all this than other people do. I know that. And so, and I can look at it from the outside most of the time, the gross majority of the time. But,
Listen, I am painfully aware of mental illness. I have 3 sisters, and one of them, she killed herself. And I have a picture of me and her in my office to just remind me to be kind to people and just remind me that life isn't fair because she had that life and I have this life. And so I absolutely hear where you're coming from, and I will maybe wrap my pep talk in a little more niceness or whatever you want to call it.
No, sorry.
You don't need to.
Yeah, because I have to tell you, I've certainly have had horrible frustration and horrible stress and all that, but I've never experienced. And I'll tell you, I've had the waking up in the middle of the night thing, which is this horrible dark feeling, which I do think is whatever that's called, anxiety. I've had that a little bit, but yes, you good for you.
No, and my husband doesn't have it. He hates his job most of the time.
He hates his boss is the
but
problem.
That's it. Yeah. But he just leaves. I mean, that just is what it is. It doesn't take him down some dark hole.
Laura, when you're in a dark place, do you have someone that you can talk to?
Yeah, I talk to you guys. But yeah, sure. And again, I am experienced and practiced enough at this that I am able to step outside and be like, okay, I'm in a dark place. Don't make any decision, blah, blah, it'll pass. I mean, that's, my dad actually told me one of the few pieces of great parental wisdom that he passed on was, I don't remember who the artist was, but it's this series of paintings, of 4 paintings of this river, and in the first painting, it's a little baby on the boat going down the river, and it's all nice and peaceful and beautiful. And then the second one is it's kind of exciting, and it's a teenager on there. And then the third is you and your kids and all in the boat, and it's just rapids and it's crazy and it's chaotic. And then the fourth one is you're older, and again it's serene and beautiful and the sun is setting. And so I just keep thinking where I'm in the rapids. I mean, I got a 12-year-old kid, I've got a husband that I work with. We have a lot going on. And I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. I force myself to get out of bed. I force myself to go for a run. And so when I do go to these dark places, I have the awareness to know that it's happening, which is something, I didn't have that 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years ago, I would just drink, to make it go away. Now I know, what, if I need to take a nap and just escape for an hour, I'll take a nap.
In episode 77, Can an Entrepreneur Raise an Entrepreneur? Diana and Jay talk about how they were both raised in businesses. Jay in his father's dime store, Diana in her parents' convenience store. The businesses that Jay and Diana have built are light years away from those of their parents. And yet, Diana tells how, quite unexpectedly, she wound up following in her parents' footsteps in one respect.
So my parents were entrepreneurs, but they actually came from a very poor country, South Korea. And we moved to the U.S. in 1974 when I was 5 years old. So they had a very hard time, with all the businesses that they had because they self-funded everything and they were working, 15, 18-hour days just to get by and make enough money. They came from like pretty desperate times. And, my parents were held up in gunpoint multiple times while I was growing up running their, convenience stores, their fish markets, or whatever they actually owned at the time. Many of the reasons were because they had to actually open it in pretty bad locations or locations where they can afford it. But obviously they weren't in the best places. Watching them throughout the years, they would come home and they would have a bag of cash afterwards because obviously they'd have to take the money out of the registers. And they would count the money, as soon as they got home. And then they'd count the coupons of what they actually had to apply everything to. And I watched it my whole life. And as many times that I could say, Lauren, that I said, I don't want to turn out like them, where I'm working 15-hour days, not sleeping much, working all the time and completely ignoring me or their child, I ended up repeating the same identical thing. But in a bigger way.
Tell us about that. When did you realize that you were repeating?
I started the business when I was 47 years old. So it was 5 years ago. I'm 52 now. And my kids were in high school then. So my husband had said to me, if you're going to actually, build a business, you should do it now because our kids are in high school. They don't really want you around as much. And they don't want to be controlled, Diana. So at the end, you're going to have a better relationship if you just go to work more. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And, because I'm a control freak, I wanted to make sure everybody's okay all the time. And I was, over controlling about what they ate, how they dressed, all of those things that I think, most mothers are with their children. And then as soon as I start the business, I am so over consumed. And now I have employees, I have people I have to support that I feel like they're my children as well. And I end up putting all this energy knowing that my kids want me to have less control of their lives. So that's how it all started. It was all for the benefit of them, to have a better relationship with them. The business starts doubling year over year. And I just get more and more sucked in, more and more consumed. Having 100 employees now, it's just every hour of my day has been consumed with work. So they recently all left for college. I have 2 freshman year, I have 1 in his senior year. And I just feel like I haven't been around for them at all for the last 4 or 5 years because of the business. And I feel guilty, but I ended up repeating the same thing my parents did for me.
In episode 78, I'm a freak about the numbers. Dana, Diana, and Jay talk about how they track their financials, including how they stay on top of accounts receivable, how they avoid overcompensating salespeople, and the importance of paying close enough attention to be able to spot mistakes.
Yeah, I have a report for everything. And the bigger I think that you scale, the less time that you have as a CEO. So instead of me trying to pull all these reports myself, I make it mandatory that my teams all send me a report on Friday. And so, of course, my PR report comes in that shows all the lead generation and what they actually have. I have a sales report that shows a 30, 60, 90 in terms of conversion, percentage of conversion based on everything that's on a pipeline. On a financial perspective, I always look at receivables once a week because people always think, oh, I generate the revenue. But if you don't actually collect, you're going to go under. I look at the balance sheets on a monthly basis just to see where my assets and liabilities are. I look at an accrual report, which basically shows me how much revenue accrual that I'm doing on a daily basis. And that report is always coming from the finance department that shows me how much generated accrual there is. I look at a P&L that's accrual and cash, so that the cash side, I always know cash flow where I am. Cash is always a lag indicator, so it's usually 60 days behind the accrual if you collect everything. But the accrual is the beginning indicator that says that you signed that contract and that's actually coming in 60 days. You should get payment on it. I also look at margins, right? Because you always have to look at if margins are going up or down based on all of your product lines. So I, am a freak about the numbers, and it's because the numbers will never lie to you. They will always tell you a story. It doesn't matter what your sales team says. The numbers tell the story, period. And obviously you want to see an upward trend for every department that you have. So I do really track everything.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I get everything you said. Makes perfect sense. The one piece of the puzzle that I'm wondering about is when you said your margins. It's not like you're buying a shirt for $12 and selling it for $19. How do you so accurately figure out what your true incremental cost of something is so that your margin, quote unquote, is accurate? Because I don't know what it is you're selling. I know what you're selling, but like your costs that go along with it. Do you feel like that's always accurate, or is that a moving target?
No. So Jay, that's such a great question. And I could tell you're an entrepreneur, a true entrepreneur, because you're asking that. So what I find is that I have a lot of product lines, right? And I have A package, B package, C package all over the place. And each package is a different one for every manufacturer that I deal with. So we have invented our own billing calculator because it was so damn complicated in terms of what we came up with. But what I realized with the sales department and the account teams, they just want to make a deal. And so you could see that the longer I'm in business, many of them have the autonomy to make their deal, right? And so because at certain times they're trying to meet the quota, they're going to go down on margin. And this is important to me because when I track it on a monthly basis and I see certain product lines, I'll take the percentage of margin per product line because I can't do it by line item. And I'll just make sure that it's somewhere, between 40 and 60%. And so if it's dropping a lot lower than that, I'm going to meet with my VP of accounts.
Okay, that makes sense. So you've got a fixed number, but it's really about discounting, which is a great answer because you're right. I've seen companies go broke because they gave the sales manager, we'll give you 2% of sales. Not a good idea because next thing you know, they're selling things below cost. And that person didn't care. They're making $1 zillion. So that's interesting. So it's about really keeping a handle on the discounting. And that makes sense because that is a problem.
Yeah, Jay, because as you get bigger, everybody else is doing the selling, right? And so you're giving them the autonomy to do it. And it's exactly what you said. Everybody wants it for themselves. They're like me generated. And those are the best salespeople, right? You make it about them and they can make money for you.
Well, I have a problem where all of a sudden they had to get this job delivered and hung on for an artwork project. It's got to be the 30th. And after a while, I figured out, well, what's the emergency that this company needs it on Tuesday, the 30th? And then you figure out, oh, wait, they went on their sales and they are unconscionable. You could run overtime. They'll do whatever they have to do to get that in for the month. And I've learned that we were very careful at the end of the month to watch for what jobs were shoved in there because they wanted it on their sales report for the month versus somebody really needed it. So that's like standard procedure for us now because it's a common problem.
Yeah. And for me, Jay, receivables is exactly that. So I have salespeople selling, but if I don't collect the money, I'm charging them back after 60 days. So that's why I check the receivables to see which people didn't pay. And if they didn't pay, because, you have over 1,000 clients, you have to check receivables and you got to charge back these salespeople because you'll go broke if you just pay them on the accrual and you never collect the money.
Diana, you described what sounds to me like a pretty sophisticated review system, and you called yourself you said you're a freak about the numbers. Were you always comfortable with numbers that way? Is this something that came naturally to you, or did you have to develop it?
No, I am not an accountant. I was a startup, and so I couldn't even afford a billing team 5 years ago. So I was the biller, and this is the beautiful part. When you do the job yourself, you're going to know everything about what you want to measure. And so when I handed off these pieces as we got bigger and ended up getting, my ops team was my billing team in the beginning because I only had 2 people on the ops side. And so between ops and me, we did all of the QuickBook invoices and sent them out, and it kept getting bigger and bigger. And now we have 5 people in billing. But now, because I went through that experience myself and did it myself, I know what reports to push because I basically did it with my ops team. And so that was such a valuable lesson because I speak to entrepreneurs all the time. You know, I have a family member that they have their own business. And when I talk to them, I'm like, well, don't you check this stuff? And they're like, no, I have a controller. And I will tell you, in the 5.5 years that I've been in business, I have found hundreds of thousands of dollars of mistakes, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of mistakes. Invoices not being sent out, you know, $30,000 invoices. Oh, didn't get sent out. Nobody cares about the business and the money as much as you do. I don't care who you hire. And at the end of the day, if you don't actually look, people make mistakes. And they don't mean to, but they just do.
In episode 81, Holy Crap, This Is All My Dreams Come True, Karen completes one of the more surprising narratives of our 2 years. When we started the podcast, she had just come off an extremely trying year of attempting to land an investor. She kept thinking she had a deal, only to see it slip away. As we started recording our weekly conversations, Karen told us that she would be taking a mental health sabbatical to get away from the business for a while. But she came back, and in October of this year, she told Jay and William that she and her co-founder had sold Blink, where she will remain CEO, for $94 million.
So when you close on a particular day, and that day money shows up in your account and all of your liabilities go away, I just want to know what goes through somebody's head when they go to bed, they wake up the next morning and they realize they've got $1 zillion sitting in an account somewhere and they're completely set. Can you just give us that emotional, when you open your eyes in the morning, what you thought about?
Yeah. God, I don't know. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, it's, and for me, Jay, it wouldn't be awesome. Like, I'm not interested in going and retiring. I'm not interested in leaving the company. And so for me to have all of what you described, and now I get to go fast. I mean, I love to go fast and I love to go big, and I've got big ideas. That morning I had to get up really early because I had 5 meetings, all to do with what are we doing now. And so I haven't had, like, honestly, I haven't had a lot of sleep in a long time, and it's not coming anytime soon. I've been, you know, because now we've got the New York time and we've got some folks in India. Some folks on the leadership team are in India. So our calls are late and they're early, and then they're everything in between. So it's been kind of nonstop, but I'm on fire. This is what I love. I love to be busy. I love to be doing big, exciting things. So I just feel, it's less of a kind of relief feeling, and it's more like, you know, like, holy crap. Like, this is like all my dreams come true, like all of them at once. And it's just this my veins are tingling. It's like that.
That's a good that's a good answer. So did you buy some new shoes?
I bought a new purse.
Okay, there you go.
It's really nice.
Okay, and then I also just want to know, the day you made the announcement to the employees, what was that?
Yeah,
it was. You think everyone knew?
No, there were a couple of dozen people. So Blink has 28 shareholders, and had 28 shareholders. And so that means that the money that the company received, and there's a big earnout portion. So the money that we received up front gets split pro rata across those 28 shareholders. So it was not all to me or Kelly. So we're majority shareholders, but then we have, 26 other folks who participated in this sale. And so they all had to agree to all this. They had to review and sign 6 different documents times 28 people over the course of 3 days. It was really intense. And we were docu-signing, like documents flying back and forth. My CFO, he was an absolute rock star because we had to route them one at a time through all these people. And so meanwhile, I'm communicating with all the shareholders to have everybody on standby. These documents are coming. And they had to be last minute because we were literally negotiating up until half an hour before we had the closing call. Like at one point, before it was going all through the lawyers and then the investment bankers and then to us and then the reverse. That was sort of the pattern, with 100 calls in between with various different due diligence folks, different work streams. But then at the end, it was just me on the phone, like all weekend, early in the morning, late at night, 7 days a week, negotiating directly with the emphasis with their head of legal and business. And then in the end, in the sort of final hours, it was, by text. While he was on the call with somebody else, something just came up, texting me because he can't call me because he's on the phone. And it was like that. And then we had the closing call, which was a Zoom call with all the bankers, all the lawyers, all the business owners. There were 30 of us on the call. Everyone just sort of went around their boxes saying like, check, 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 just like a flight taking off. And after months and months of this, and I got goosebumps just thinking about that moment. And everybody went around and I was just waiting for one more thing because it was like that, like one more text, one more item that we have to clear. And everyone went around and check, check, check. And then the head lawyer on their side said, all right, we're good. I'm going to initiate the funds transfer. And at that moment, I just started shaking. I'm like, this is it. Like we, because everything was already signed. And I was like, oh my God.
Often, the highs and lows of entrepreneurship come at you in waves. In episode 84, I can do it. I promise you, I can do it. Dana explains what it's like to experience a high and a low simultaneously. That week, she returned from a triumphant trip to Germany, where she toured potential sites for her hair salons on multiple military bases. But when she got back to Detroit, she was greeted by resignation letters from 2 of her key employees. Welcome, Dana White. We haven't spoken in a while, Dana, in part because you've been traveling the world. How are you?
I'm okay.
Okay, what's going on?
I have no idea what's going on.
What do you mean?
I don't know what's going on.
Well, let's start. You've just been traveling.
I have.
Where were you?
I was in Germany.
And you were there looking at a military base?
I was looking at like 5 or 6 or 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long were you there?
6 days.
Wow. So is that what you're not sure about, or did that go well? What can you tell us about that?
So there are great things happening, and there are some not so great things happening. And it's because of both of these things that I don't know what's going on.
I see.
Right? Like, what is going on right now? How is it that you win them over in Germany? I mean, win them over. Like, when I tell you, they are like, how many does she want? Oh, by the way, Fort Hood can be ready. Fort Bragg is a go. Like, oh, and by the way, don't forget, we want all of the. I mean, they are beyond impressed with me. And they're not bringing me on base to bid on these contracts as if I'm a contractor. They're bringing me in like I'm Starbucks. It's not, and so that's what I had to learn was the difference, right? There are salons on bases that they put the contract out and you bid on them. And you just keep bidding every time your contract is up. Starbucks doesn't have a contract. And neither will Paralee Boyd. That's how interested they are in having me. I've surpassed that process. And that's huge. The people who are working with me that know this company, AFIS, the Army and Air Force Exchange, they don't do anything with deliberate speed except work with Paralee Boyd. And they're moving quickly. So that's one thing.
That sounds pretty great.
Right? Exactly. That's amazing. You come back and you have a 7 a.m. debrief call about how you did such a great job and left such a great impression on that trip. Okay, great. So then you're franchising. And yes, that process has slowed down, not because of the work I'm doing in, military stuff. That stuff is easy. It's just looking and talking. That's it. But at this point, it slows down because your Midtown location is doing decent numbers, better numbers than they've ever done because now you're down to one location, but your team is falling apart. I get back on Thursday. I get a resignation letter from Ashley.
Wait, that's your operations manager, your key person.
Yep, my operations manager, and I get on Saturday. I got a resignation from my manager, and it was emotional. It was emotional resignations. It wasn't, this is a bad company. It was, Dana, we don't think you like us, from the manager. The team's morale is low because they just want you to laud them. Where's Dana? And so get on a conference call with my manager and operations manager. And my question was, as the owner, well, if my team does not feel appreciated, one, why am I hearing this after a resignation letter has been given? And two, why wasn't I told before? Well, why should I tell you? And then Ashley, she did interject and say, it's your duty. That's your job, to let leadership know how your team is doing.
In our last regular episode of the year, episode 88, The Vomit List, William told Jay about an interesting strategy he's adopted to try to hang on to his most valuable employees in the very tight labor market that he predicted a year ago.
I've done a couple retention bonuses early in the pandemic. So Lauren, you're a key player here. We're about to go through a really tough year and a half, right? Or let's call it a year. And, we don't really do bonuses, but I'm going to bonus you a year from now. I'm going to give you an extra, I don't know what, give you $10,000 or whatever the number is, right?
If I stay.
By the way, it's a bonus you're going to get in a year, but actually, I'm going to go ahead and give it to you now, okay? Now, I want you to think about this before you say yes, because I'm also going to have you sign a piece of paper that says, I'm accepting this bonus in advance, and if I leave the company for an unfireable offense between now and a year from now, I'll pay this back with interest.
Do people sign that?
I had one not, and two did.
Wait, did you give this to everybody?
No.
How does that work?
Well, I probably shouldn't say it on a podcast. If my whole office listens to it, they're going to go, wow, I wasn't on the list.
That's what I'm thinking.
So I had a friend who used to say, you need to keep a vomit list. So I said, what's a vomit list? He said, it's a very short list. It's probably no more than 3 people that if they walked into your office and said, can I have a minute at the end of the day? And you know what that talk is. That's right. You before you even let them sit down, you're looking for a trash can because you're going to throw up.
Yeah.
Right. And if you frame it that way, I've yet to meet a team leader who can't immediately name the 2 or 3 people. And it's not always the 2 or 3 best paid people. It's like I get a church that's going through a building campaign, and for them, their finance director for the next 8 months is a very important role that they don't want to have to train somebody new. And so it's that, or for sometimes it's an admin person that you can leave in a year, but for right now through this tough season, I got to have you around and I'll pay you a bonus in advance. And of course you need to give them time to, I give them a week. You think about it. If you don't want to sign it, no harm, no foul. I get it. Life changes. You might have something else going on, but it's yours if you want it.
All I can say is, wow. I just don't know. Yeah, wow.
Well, if those really are employees who are that crucial to you, I would think if other employees found out about it, that's a defensible situation.
Oh, my God.
It was for the good of the company, Lauren.
Seriously, Lauren? You think the average person's going to feel okay about that?
Well, this is what I said. I assume that no meeting is actually private. Word's going to leak out. How are you not going to tell a friend or a coworker or whatever? So I just said, listen, I like you. You're great for the team. You do good work. I like working with you. But this bonus has more to do with protecting the company while we're in a very vulnerable season. Your role during this next year is super critical to the whole team. And for the good of the team and everyone that works here, I'm making this offer to you. And I don't even tell them if I do it with anybody else.
So you really can't be sure whether anyone else heard about it and they're pissed about it.
No, you can't.
William, what happened with the person who refused to sign? Did you give the bonus anyway?
No. And they had a job offer within 3 months and left, and they're in a great situation. It really stunk to lose them, and they weren't our highest paid person. But
did you know that day that they were on their way out?
I think they probably knew, yeah.
No, did you know?
No, but I did after they didn't sign it.
All right, that's a wrap for the 21 Hats podcast in 2021. As always, you can find a transcript of this episode at 21hats.com. That transcript has links from each of the excerpts to the entire episode in case you want to go back and listen to any of them in full. My thanks once again to Karen Clark Cole, Paul Downs, Jake Goltz, Diana Lee, Stephanie Stuckey, William Vanderblumen, Dana White, and Laura Zander. And thanks for listening, everyone.